A very Pittsburgh Steelers heavy episode today because they've had quite the active offseason and there are still moves to come. NFL Spotlight starts now. Welcome in. It is the Friday, May 30th edition of the NFL Spotlight Show. I am your host, Ari Meirov. Wrapping up the week here. Of course, if you have not seen the Spotlight Guest of the Week, which we had on Tuesday, it was longtime pro scout Ronnie McGill, three-time Super Bowl champion of the Patriots. The week before, we had Raiders GM John Spytek. So a lot going on over here, YouTube, Apple, Spotify. Make sure you are subscribed here on the show. Today, we're going to be focused more on one team in particular, and one team that I think still has so many moves to come here at a time when there aren't many moves happening around the NFL. Let me bring in my good friend Ben Allen. Ben, what is going on? It's great to see you.
Yeah, it's great to see you too, Ari. Kind of like you said, this entire show is going to be dedicated to a team that I'm not a big fan of with my Ravens helmet over my shoulder, the Pittsburgh Steelers. But we must talk about them because they have had, like you said, a whole lot going on. And at the same time, not a lot. Busy offseason in a way. You know, you trade for DK Metcalf from the Seattle Seahawks, trade away George Pickens. Then you sign Mason Rudolph, but you don't really want him to be the starting quarterback. You actually want Aaron Rodgers to be the starting quarterback. Only problem is we're not 100% sure he wants to be playing in the NFL. The legend of the team, Terry Bradshaw, speaking out saying he doesn't want anything for the Steelers to do with the bark chewer, Mr. Aaron Rodgers. The Steelers are also being connected now with Dolphins tight end Jonnu Smith. They supposedly want to add another wide receiver. By the way, they already traded away one of the wide receivers, George Pickens, who we already mentioned. And on top of all this, your superstar pass rusher, TJ Watt, not at voluntary workouts because he wants a new contract and looks like he's prepared to hold out. Did I miss anything?
I think you got most of it, and I don't even know where to start with all this, but I'm going to start off the last thing you said. I'm going to start with TJ Watt because that's actually very interesting to me simply because he has kind of hinted a little bit that he's not happy. I mean, he obviously is not there right now at voluntary OTAs. That's perfectly fine, but he did post something on his IG story a few weeks ago or months ago, whenever it was, of him kind of giving it looks like the peace sign a little bit coming off the field. I think that has to do with the contract because the pass rush market this offseason has gone absolutely crazy. We've seen Myles Garrett reach $40 million per year. We saw Danielle Hunter get a new deal. Max Crosby got $35.5 million per year. And simply put, there are other pass rushers who are currently waiting as well, most notably Micah Parsons, Aiden Hutchinson in Detroit. We have Trey Hendrickson in Cincinnati. So there's a lot of movement there. And the question really becomes, are the Steelers willing to give a contract extension to TJ Watt that will start with the number 4? And to this point, clearly they have not been willing to. So as a result, he's not there. The last time they had to do a big extension of TJ Watt, that went down all the way to the wire. And as the story goes, TJ Watt actually instructed his agents to stop negotiating and just get the deal done where it's at right now, walked into our Rooney's office, did a deal, and it was over. This one might take a little bit longer because it is a third contract. He is up there a little bit more in age. Is he still a great player? Yes, he is. But until the deal gets done, we are still going to be talking about this. After that, it kind of gets interesting over here because you mentioned the George Pickens trade, and we spoke about that about 2-3 months ago. Like after they traded for DK Metcalf, I came here on the show and I was like, listen, I'll see it when I believe it. I do not believe DK is going to be there with George. And the simple reason was George, great player, awesome guy who could make amazing catches and everything, but it just wasn't working there. It got a little bit toxic at some points, and a fresh start was needed. And I think him seeing DK Metcalf come in, a third contract guy, get $33 million per year when he's extension eligible, that was never going to work for him. So they ship him off to Dallas, but we're back to square one now where it's like, who's going to be playing across this other great receiver? Last year, they tried to get Ayuk across of George Pickens. Now you have DK with nobody really viable across from him. So now there are these reports surfacing out there. They've been trying to find another playmaker to add to the offense. I know I saw the Jonnu Smith stuff. Jonnu Smith is somebody who wants to stay in Miami, had an awesome year last year, really became the top pass catcher on that team in Miami, even though they had Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. I don't get the sense right now that Pittsburgh is actively trying to trade for him. I don't get the sense right now that Miami is looking to trade him. So it's more of, can he get a new contract in Miami? To this point, they have not been willing to up his money for this year, where he's scheduled to make just a little over $4 million. Again, he was a Pro Bowl last year, but who is going to be available here for the Pittsburgh Steelers kind of becomes the question out there. You think of, the wide receivers who are still free agents. You think of a Keenan Allen. You think of an Amari Cooper. You think of a DJ Chark. Could these guys be attractive to them? The Aaron Rodgers element is still out there. If they go after Aaron, do you try to trade for Alan Lazard, who's with the Jets? Of course, he's followed him throughout his career from Green Bay to, of course, the Jets. So that could be a possibility. But this is a move that the Steelers, they've been trying to find that other receiver for a while. They found DK, but who was the other one? It was not going to be George. So I do think they're going to find somebody over here. Try to think of guys who have been around Arthur Smith in the past, guys who have been around Aaron Rodgers in the past, assuming Aaron comes. That is all guys to keep an eye on over here. As for the Aaron Rodgers element, yes, it still hasn't happened yet. Yes, Mason Rudolph is the quarterback right now. They, of course, drafted Will Howard as well. They have Skylar Thompson on the roster, but they need to get somebody better than that. And they have been waiting and hoping that Aaron Rodgers will come. And the sense right now remains, from the Steelers' perspective, that he will eventually come. The mandatory minicamp, which is coming up over here in the near future, is the next really big date that we're watching for over here with them, if he's going to sign by then. And keep in mind, last year, the entire thing with the Jets and being away, going to Egypt and getting fined, and the way it was handled in public. Like, if Aaron Rodgers right now is dealing with a personal issue, I saw him on Joe Rogan's podcast, and he did mention briefly that he's dealing with people that are close to him who are dealing with cancer or a disease. So there is something personal going on over there. If that's the case, the Steelers are okay with him being away. And they're also okay with the fact that he's not signed yet. So there is no distraction of him not being here. So you come here whenever you feel like you're going to be fully committed here. And they're kind of desperate if you think about it. Like, this is a team that has a bunch of aging players. You think of TJ Watt up there, 30 years old. Minka Fitzpatrick is 29. You think of Cameron Hayward at the back end of his career. You think of, they traded for a guy like DK Metcalf, who they signed him to the extension, but this is now his third contract, and he's had a number of injuries in his career. Like, there are a bunch of guys, Alex Highsmith, up. Like, there's a lot of these guys on this roster over here who are up there in age, and this is like your win now type of mode right now in Pittsburgh. So you can go out there and say, we're going to go with Mason Rudolph or rookie. You need somebody who comes in and could potentially get you over the hump. Could Aaron Rodgers be somebody who ends up, being a big fat X and not working out? It for sure could. But is there a potential where it actually works out? I think there also isn't. That is why Mike Tomlin has been pushing for this. So we're still waiting for it. I do think it eventually happens. And the fallback option would probably be Kirk Cousins, but I still lean towards Aaron Rodgers ending up in Pittsburgh at some point and being this team's quarterback. And if he does, his week 1 game would be against the New York Jets back at the Meadowlands, which would be quite fun.
So the doomsday scenario here, you don't end up with Rodgers. You don't get a Kirk Cousins. You can't find an agreement for a number on that. You don't trade for another receiver or Jonnu Smith. You're going basically with Metcalf and company. And then you also say don't have TJ Watt show up. Is this the year that's, of course, everything goes wrong for the Steelers? Is this the year they don't go 500? Like, we've said this multiple times, but it feels like there's a lot of factors this time that could be out of Tomlin's control.
I'm not even going to go there. I mean, I think I'm not going to go to the whole win-loss thing. I'll just say this. I think TJ Watt eventually gets done. I do think it's been a little bit more harder than both sides would like it to be. I'll just say that. But in the end, cooler heads will prevail in all of this, and he's going to get paid accordingly. Question really becomes the guarantees and the average and those type of things, the cash flow. It's been a negotiation that's been ongoing. It's not something that's been as easy as you would hope.
We've talked about this with some of the other guys. Like, it inevitably just enters the sphere. Is Micah Parsons going to get traded? Is Trey Hendrickson going to get traded? Is there any world in which TJ Watt gets traded?
No, TJ Watt is not getting traded. It's it's a situation where they just need to continue negotiating and let this thing come together. I mean, that's what happened last time. Keep in mind, like Omar Khan, who's the GM, he comes from the cap side. So he's one of the main negotiators when it comes to all of this. It's essentially a situation where it's a very complex contract. It's very big money. The pass rush market has changed a lot over here in the last several months in the NFL. The Myles Garrett contract was one that people in the NFL thought that we're going to get to $40 million per year here this offseason. Nobody thought it would have happened back in March. People thought it would happen in August. And as a result, it would have been like, are we all going to stare at each other and wait till who does it? But the fact that it's already at $40 million per year has thrown off all these other contracts. That's kind of been a big part of all this. And that's why the Micah Parsons deal is a little bit more complex than it should be. The Aiden Hutchinson deal, a little bit more complex than it should be. It's the fact that a $40 million per year guy happened back in March and it didn't happen over here in August when they're all waiting at the same time and who's going to reset it and all that. The fact it happened so long ago has made this one a little bit more complicated, but I do think it gets done. The receiver thing, it's been known for a while. Pittsburgh is trying to find somebody else. I know everybody's like, well, why did you trade George Pickens? No, they were looking to trade George Pickens for a long time. They were done with him after this season was over. I know some people have been trying to tiptoe around this topic and not say the way it is. That organization was not going to move forward with George Pickens this year. Whether DK Metcalf was there or was not there, it was over. It was not going to happen. Too many things happened last year behind the scenes, publicly, before games, after games, with Mike Tomlin. There was too many things over there for him to come back. And Tomlin has done an exceptional job over the years of controlling these players, from Antonio Brown to Chase Claypool to Le'Veon Bell to a bunch of other guys. Only 3 years it took for George Pickens for it to be enough is enough, even though he's a very talented player. New environment. Hopefully he does great in Dallas. It was never going to happen in Pittsburgh. They knew they were moving on from him, and they're going to eventually at some point this offseason find somebody else. If it's not going to be in the trade market, which is what they've been trying to do for the last several weeks, it's going to be on the free agent market. And those guys I mentioned before, Keenan Allen, Amari Cooper, all those names that I mentioned before, they're all waiting for the inevitable injury. They're all waiting for the inevitable desperate team who needs another receiver who will pay us the money we're waiting for. So those guys are going to be there if no trade comes to fruition. So I do think they'll figure that out. And then the quarterback thing, listen, Aaron Rodgers, nobody wants to get into his mind and try to predict what's going to happen. I'll just say this much. The Steelers believe he's coming. They believe he's coming, and Mike Tomlin has been in communication with Aaron Rodgers to this point. And I'm sure everybody saw, but Aaron Rodgers did this question and answer thing where he answered a bunch of questions. He mentioned he will not play for the Saints. I don't think the Saints were interested anyways, but he also mentioned he will be playing in Chicago this year, and that's because the Steelers play in Chicago this year. So I think that's all part of it over here. He knows he's coming. It's more about, when am I going to be fully committed to football to come? So I think this will all resolve eventually, but this is an offseason that's been ongoing for a while in Pittsburgh. And usually what's usually a very first-class organization or whatever, it's been a very interesting offseason in Pittsburgh with so many things going on, and it's still ongoing as we get into the month of June here soon. But eventually I do think all of these things will resolve itself, and they'll be ready for the season. And of course, Mike Tomlin every year, winning record, they find a way. So I'm not going to doubt it this year. The bigger question is if they're able to get over the hump and start winning some playoff games.
The quarterback situation, obviously the most important position in maybe all of North American sports. You have no quarterback right now that you feel super comfortable probably throwing out there week one, but you took a shot on Will Howard, a guy who has won a national championship at the collegiate level. He said everyone's going to pay that passed on him. All the other teams that passed on him took other quarterbacks. How comfortable do you think that they would be trying to develop him and potentially playing him this year if they don't get one of those veteran quarterbacks?
No, I don't think that's like option Z for them. I mean, Will Howard is a great, developmental guy potentially. Like, keep in mind, Steelers are picking 21. They could have taken a quarterback there. They didn't. They came back on the clock in round 3. Like, Shador was still there. Everyone's like, oh, 21. They passed on him. This is a roster that's built to win right now. These veteran players don't have time for your developmental project over here. They need somebody who has been there, done that, understands the NFL, understands the locker room, understands being a leader. Like, they need that type of a player for this team. And the fact they haven't addressed it officially to this point obviously is concerning, but I don't see Will Howard stepping on the field, barring multiple injuries on the depth chart of the year. Even Mason Rudolph, who's there right now as the QB1, technically, they like Mason Rudolph. Mason Rudolph a couple of years ago was actually, playing well in a playoff game versus the Buffalo Bills. He actually was the one quarterback on that roster because Pickett and Trubisky were not good, who actually was able to get the ball to George Pickens. Like there were some things to like there. The fact that they brought him back, it's because he actually had some success there. So they like him as the backup option. So he makes sense as somebody who could eventually play this year for whatever reason. But no, I don't expect Will Howard to be on the field in his rookie year, barring some injuries.
So let's now do the flip of it. Aaron shows up. He seems dedicated to the team. There was obviously a lot of expectations with the New York Jets, the roster that they built around him, basically got him everything he wanted in theory to be able to go out there and succeed. That didn't lead to success. What do the Pittsburgh Steelers look like as far as their potential for success if Aaron Rodgers is QB1 week one?
The one thing about Pittsburgh that I do want to give them credit for is they've been able to fix up the offensive line here over the last number of years. And that has been one of the weaker things a little bit over the last several years. And they've really started to address it primarily through the draft. I mean, you look at what they did. Broderick Jones is still a bit of a question mark there at left tackle. You hope he's able to actually find some consistency. But for the rest of it, Isaac Suamalu, who they signed over from Philadelphia, has been there at left guard. Zach Frazier, their center, who they picked in the second round, has already become a Pro Bowl caliber center for them. They obviously have Troy Fatanu, who they drafted in the first round as well over here recently. Like there are guys on this offensive line who are going to help protect whichever quarterback it is, especially if it's a 41-year-old Aaron Rodgers. So that is a very, very big plus over here. DK Metcalf is still an exceptional receiver. They paid him a lot of money. Pratt Fryermuth is a really good tight end, above average tight end. Like there are pieces, like you look at some of the receivers even on the roster, like there are guys over here who they drafted in those middle rounds or second, third, fourth round over here who they're hoping could actually finally pop a little bit. You look at Roman Wilson, who barely played last year. You look at a Calvin Austin as well. Like those are guys who they're hoping could take the next step, but they're not going to rely on those guys as wide receiver too. That's why I keep on saying over here, they're going to address that receiver spot over here at some point from May 29, May 30, which is where we are today, until the season starts all the way in September. There's going to be another viable receiver added to this roster, veteran receiver, whether it's on the trade market or on the free agent market. Yes, they've looked also at tight ends, but they're kind of looking for those versatile tight ends who can line up outside and not necessarily as an inline tight end. So those are guys you should be thinking of. And again, think of guys Arthur Smith has worked with, Jonnu Smith he's worked with. Think of some other guys. Think of guys if Aaron Rodgers comes in, if he's worked with. Think of guys who could separate well. That could be a Keenan Allen. Like there are guys out there who make sense for this team, and they know they have time from now until then to figure it out. And especially when the likely starting quarterback is not on the team, it's not as urgent because the guy you're going to be adding over here is not even going to be working with the quarterback. So I'm not in any panic mode if I'm the Pittsburgh Steelers.
If you were to pick one of the free agent wide receivers that are out there, which do you think would be the best fit for the way that they want to approach their roster? Is it an Amari Cooper? Is it a Keenan Allen? Is there another guy out there? I know you mentioned DJ Chark as well, somebody who can zip down the field.
Yeah, Keenan Allen is the name to watch. And I think they've been monitoring that name throughout this offseason. Keenan, I think, was hoping for a bigger contract here this offseason. Of course, got traded from the Chargers to the Bears last year, didn't do an extension in Chicago, was hoping to have that big year, had an okay year, and eventually here becomes a free agent. And the veteran receiver market for those type of guys just really never came together. Like Cooper Kupp got a decent deal. Stephon Diggs got a decent deal. Devontae Adams got a decent deal. Everybody else, they were signing for below what they were expecting. And Keenan thought he belonged in that group with the Stephon Diggs and with the Devontae Adams and Cooper Kupps. And teams just didn't value him the same way. So the Steelers have been in contact with his agent. They're like, listen, if anything is coming together, let us know because we're still in on this. But I do think the Steelers want to check out the trade market first before circling back there. And for Keenan's sake, if the money isn't right now, it's not going to change anytime soon. So he and his people, it probably makes sense over here to wait and see that inevitable injury that always happens in training camp could happen as well. Maybe, just maybe, he wants to get on a team, sign right now. That's possible. but the Steelers have been watching that one. The route running ability, the separation ability. Is he up there in age? Yes, but I think that would fit what they're kind of looking for here in this offense.
A lot to monitor going on with the Pittsburgh Steelers. I don't imagine that we're going to be stopping talking about them anytime soon. Anything else on the Steelers we missed besides Terry Bradshaw telling Aaron Rodgers to go chew on bark, which is hilarious to me.
Yeah, I mean, there have been a couple of players there that have kind of dropped these hints, like Bradshaw obviously being one of them. But even like current players, I mean, we saw Cam Hayward say decide already. That was a few months ago. Darius Slade, their new cornerback, also said something this week that kind of felt like a shot to Aaron. So there have been some of that going on over here, but they just want resolution. That's all it is. And like again, Aaron said he's dealing with personal stuff. We're gonna take him for his word over there. But whenever he decides to show up, I'll tell you this much: it's gonna be this is the team and this is what's going on. And I think they're going to try to hold him accountable a little bit at this point in his career when this is the only team that really has interest in him. Nobody else has interest. So I think Aaron knows that this is really his last hurrah over here to try to get this right. And this is a team that's ready to win right now. And if that's the case, maybe he gets them over the hump, maybe he doesn't, but we will see. But like you said, Ben, this is not the last time we will be talking about the Steelers here on the NFL Spotlight Show. Maybe by the time we come back over here to start next week, we might have some updates, maybe not, maybe yes. I guess there's only one way to find out. That will do it here for our Friday, May 30 edition of the NFL Spotlight Show. Like I said, we will be back here on Monday morning to talk about everything that happened over the weekend, all the NFL headlines and news and rumors and whatever else, only the real stuff, none of the fake rumors you might be seeing on X. We will see you then.